And we are up. Episode number 18 of the Our Town podcast. And this is going to be physically demanding for us today as the air conditioning is out in the upstairs of my house where the studio is. The downstairs AC unit is struggling. It was supposed to have been replaced today, and they're saying it'll be tomorrow. So I'll introduce my guest here in a moment, but if you recall, for anybody who saw episode 15, you saw about 4 water bottles sitting in front of my guest, Clayton Henchman, that day. And that was kind of by mistake. I forgot to remove the water bottles and like distribute them out because there was a bunch of people in the studio. But we might need that much water to get through this. Carl Holden, founder, creative director of Zellus Marketing. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep.
Is my guest today. And how are you doing today, my friend?
Other than a little warm like you, I'm fine. But I was telling you earlier, we have our house a little warmer than other people because my wife is from Mexico, so I'm not super hot. But this is warm for sure.
Right.
But we'll get through it, and just everybody should know we're not sweating because we're nervous. We're just a little warm.
And you turn on the studio lights. That's where principally why I'm wearing a black shirt. This is actually a Splunk shirt. Splunk always has cool little nifty, says "You're just my source" type. I was at a SAP IT conference or something over at the Space and Rocket Center, and everyone was flocking to the Splunk booth because they were giving out free T-shirts. So I figured, all right, if I sweat through my shirt, well, you won't see that too bad if I had wore a light color shirt. But you know what I want to do with you? I want to start right away with the Rocket City app.
Sure.
Normally, I will go through, I guess, kind of growing up years at the outset. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you wake up very excited each day.
Yep.
And actually, let me step back from that one moment. You just had a baby? Your wife just had a baby?
Yeah.
Awesome.
His name's Tom. He's 3 weeks old. And he's doing great. Mom's doing great. And we're just very blessed.
That's awesome. So excited to get up. Well, hopefully you're getting some sleep.
Some, yeah.
So your excitement to get out of the house might not just be to go work on projects, but to actually take a break from Tom, right?
No, he's not that bad. He sleeps pretty well actually. He's getting there, but I think he's gonna get better. Our first one had colic.
Okay.
So this seems like a breeze compared to the first one.
Yeah. And how old what's the name and what's your oldest?
So my oldest, he's 2,
Okay.
and his name is Leo.
Leo. Okay.
And then I have Tom, my son. He's a couple weeks, and my wife, Viridiana.
Awesome.
She just goes by V.
V. And you said she's from Mexico.
She is.
Which state in Mexico?
Querétaro.
Oh, yeah. Or is that, okay, Querétaro. Is that not different than Quintana Roo?
Yeah, it's different.
Different, yeah.
It's a state and a city.
Okay.
But don't test my Mexican geography skills. They're not great. It's north of Mexico City.
Okay.
So it's central Mexico.
Got it. I remember Sonora, I think, is a state.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe where Jalisco is. And
I don't think those are anywhere near there.
No, probably further away. So the Rocket City app.
Yep.
I know we will eventually get to a point where we'll provide some context a little bit more around Zellus Marketing and how you started that. But let's start with the app.
Sure.
Because I saw, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, you posted that you're already at like 3,000 users in 30 days. Can you set the stage on what the Rocket City app is?
Sure.
And then a little bit into kind of the evolution, who helped you with that design and what's your role and responsibility with it?
Right. So, and we may get back to this with sort of my career in marketing.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff is changing. If you haven't noticed, Facebook and social media in general has just been really weird the last couple of years through the last election, and just people's stuff getting turned off, or just the rules changing there. And then lately with them having a hiring freeze, and all of a sudden Facebook's calling agencies like me and saying, hey, let's be partners.
Oh, really?
They've never done that, really. So unless you were spending lots of money with them, they would never call you. And our specialization is more into the Google realm. And so I was surprised when they called me. But what really came down to where this all stemmed from was a little over a year ago, I actually helped one of my clients, Lawler's Barbecue, make a video game. And it was a mobile video game on the mobile stores, and you ran around as a little tasty pig guy and pick up food, and it was a fun game, and you could actually earn, rewards, food.
Right.
For playing the game. And it was a really interesting experiment to play and see that people really liked it, and they liked seeing that technology on a local basis. And getting the word out for that was surprisingly difficult. And there's a lot of stuff about Huntsville that people don't know about that I feel like social media, where it's at, can't really fully help local, because you're also competing against Coca-Cola and Kim Kardashian.
Right.
And you're not going to beat them. They have more followers. They have more money. So my passion came into with always having to see like local business succeed. How do I help create a tool that over the long term can be useful on a local basis, and that is helping businesses here rather than basically just exporting money out to Silicon Valley to get permission to talk to our neighbors. And that's currently how all of that is, and it's worked well for a while, and it's getting, difficult. Not to call anybody out, but some of the big commercial developments have like 50,000 followers on Facebook, and they're lucky to get like 10 likes on a post.
Right.
So those are major issues that I'm concerned about, and that concern kind of thought, unlike other stuff in Huntsville, this isn't rocket science. Building an app, it takes money and time, but it isn't super, super complicated. And so during Corona, unfortunately, a lot of people struggled, but we were covered up. And rather than taking all that money and just sticking it in my own bank account, I decided, what can I do to invest more into our community to build a tool like this? And what infrastructure can I build into that will have a long-term benefit,
right?
That'll sustain itself, and that it will support local in the long term. And so that's where Rocket City app and that idea kind of came from, was this concern that we need additional options, because traditional radio and TV, if you look at their parking lots, there's like a dozen cars there. So the other ways of getting word out has waned. And then agencies, like me, are seeing the issues of social media, and the other places are basically pay to play at this point. So I knew that I couldn't do this on my own, didn't want to do it on my own, so I went to All Things Madison and We Are Huntsville and said, look, I see the struggles that you're having, and I want to build this tool set with you for you to view it just like you view Facebook, because both of them, within their advertising, they'll do stuff on their website and promotions within social media, and wanted them to also be able to say, and you get featured in Rocket City app. To their advertisers, and also to just take all of the events and blog posts that they have and make it easier for people to access. And then I think a lot of people, when I started doing the research, finding people like yourself and other podcasts in town, if you go to the media section in Rocket City app, you'll see, wow, there's like this guy there's a woodworking podcast that has like over 50,000 followers throughout the United States. You've got your show, of course, which gets put in there. And so all of this was available, and so put it all in one place, and also YouTube videos and events. And there's more crazy, cool ideas we have for the future, but we've got to start at basically just creating a springboard for all of this stuff to live in first.
So going back to what you made the comment about the Kardashians and things, and basically what you're describing there is the national level algorithm that Facebook and TikTok or whomever else, that's the barrier we're all trying to penetrate, essentially, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe even geek out a little bit on how you crack that?
Well, The issue is like a local event just is not going to catch the buzz of your favorite celebrity having a surprise baby.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem, is putting national content up against local content. The local content will always lose. And what I've been warning people lately, and I know, hey Google, Facebook, I know you're listening.
Right.
What did Corona teach big tech? It taught them that they don't need local businesses in order to thrive. In fact, they get the opposite. And now that we can't barely get everybody hired, who's losing money? Big tech.
Right.
Because when it came down to it, they liked us being inside. My business grew because I benefit from big tech and people being stuck on the internet. But when we go all back out, not on our phones, then Facebook, for the first time, says it lost users.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are things that, while I'm not saying that Facebook or Google or any of those things are evil, they've done a lot of good. They don't really have any incentive to sit down at the CEOs all look at each other and say, you know what we should do? Build more local business tools.
Right.
Because local business generally doesn't have as much money as these other ones. Now, collectively it does, and maybe one day they'll figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of TikTok, did you know what the biggest growing social media was?
In the last year?
In the last couple years. Give a guess.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm going to guess Pinterest.
Nextdoor.
Nextdoor.
You ever been on Nextdoor?
No.
It's basically one where you enter in where you live, prove where you are, and people next to each other can talk to each other.
Okay.
And especially when people are at home. And as people are going back out, Nextdoor has grown quite a bit. You have to take a look at them. And I've had several clients. We've started conversations about actually advertising over there because the audience is big enough. So those are concerns as well that I saw, that as big tech kind of suffers now that we're back out doing things, we should all question why that system is the way that it is. And also, just as America, like, be more aware that we need to make sure small business succeeds, because while it's nice that your stocks go up, like, small business constitutes over half of our entire economy.
Yeah.
If we continue to allow those to not succeed, we're just setting ourselves up for failure in the long run anyways.
So I shout out to Clark Dunn, who's a buddy of yours I know, and has the Beyond Rockets podcast, which is featured on Rocket City app and Rocket City Cast. And I believe he interviewed you at one point, and you guys used a cool example of you go into Google, and I can type in restaurants near me, ice cream near me, but if you type in podcast near me, you get nothing.
Right.
Describe a little bit then, from like, are they holding hostage then in a way that kind of, I mean, I put in, when I upload something to YouTube, I put in, I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. You know, for the most part, you're tagging stuff that there's some sort of location, but somehow, some way, right, it's still not reaching someone who might type in something like podcast near me and they get nothing. How does that get removed from that algorithm?
Well, I've looked it up. So Google is a lot of what we do. If you Google Huntsville marketing, Zellus is at the top.
Right.
Because that's what we're really good at. And what I've spent the last 10 years trying to figure out. And I wouldn't say that I know 100% what's going on over there. Google doesn't tell anyone, but I know much better than a lot of people, at least locally. So it's a couple of different things. It's that people don't search podcasts near me, because I think also social media and other things have kind of just taught us go with the popular stuff, and some of the local just kind of doesn't get searched because people don't think in that way.
Right.
People like yourself who run a show might probably think, oh, what are other podcasters that are near me? But the general public isn't really aware of that. But I think with the pride that we're all feeling with the growth of Huntsville, I think those types of searches, those types of interests have definitely increased. In fact, in Rocket City app, you can check which kind of notifications you would like to have. And I think about a fifth of all users have checked the box for local podcasts and YouTube. So
Cool.
I've proven that people are interested and want to know about that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not something people were searching previously. So in saying that, I don't think Google was withholding anything. It's just, I think it's partly reprogramming we need to do on our own.
I'm going to bring up the internet, which
Okay.
basically means I'm going to bring up things that we can look at together. And I want to bring up your Rocket City app. So let's see here. I'm going to switch over. Everyone should see that now. First thing I want you to comment on is the color set, kind of those red, yellow, and blue. And it's very simple. I'm sure that wasn't a trivial amount of time, right? To probably think through just your logo and the presentation and the coloring. Can you talk a little bit about that? The kind of what went into designing your logo and the color set?
For sure. Well, it may look familiar. Those colors you add one more color, green, and those are similar colors. Not the exact palette.
Right.
It is similar to Google. So we are using design cues that are popular right now. A lot of white space with very bright colors, and 3 colors in that it doesn't really look like anything other than a variety. And those are the primary colors. So
Sure.
they're usable in a lot of different ways. And so I wanted to avoid, using a darker red, because then the Auburn fans are like, he's just a Bama fan and all this stuff. So there was very intentional in that it's branded to almost not feel too much like any given brand, but more of just literally using the primary colors. And that's why there's no green, because green's not one. And
Right.
Those colors are, red being the Rocket City, being the blue, and app being the yellow. Kind of, there's a bit to that, the energy with the rocket, the blue to the city, and the kind of the landscape, and then app, the yellow, the things to do, your goals and things. So there's a little bit of that branding inside of that as well that built in. Of course, it's Rocket City. Why not just name it Rocket City app? And that also it covers both Huntsville and Madison stuff. So basically anything within a 50-mile radius of downtown Huntsville is going to get included within the app. And that's why I didn't want to call it Huntsville app or try to shoot for anything too abstract. Literally just call it what it is.
Okay.
It's an app about Rocket City.
And let me think what I got prepared here. So
I do want to mention these here.
Yeah.
Part of the reason, go back down to the logos there. Part of the reason we were able to get 3,000 followers is it's these businesses.
Yep.
I just want to read them out loud because they have handed us money to
Absolutely.
promote these. And so, of course, Lawler's Barbecue, Hudson Alpha, Lee Acres, Lee Daniel, Family Law, Rebecca Lowry with Remax, the Masters Salon, LP Digital Media Group, the Gallery 111 Arts and Venue, Art and Events Venue, Scout Pest Control, and McClary Ford. They're all supporters of Zellus and this app and getting the word out on this, and just want to make sure that they know we appreciate their help, because we wouldn't have gotten to 3,000 users already if it wasn't for their assistance.
That's awesome.
It takes quite a bit to make an app.
Yeah.
I needed some help getting it out there too. So I really appreciate that from them.
And, I'm scrolling down here, big technology, on local scale, shop local, app local. I like that verb, app local. That's cool. Local powered partnership, affordable opportunities. I thought one that was really cool that I don't think you fleshed out completely yet is kind of job seekers. It looks like when you click on that for jobs, it will take you into those databases where, geographically, any job in Huntsville. Is that kind of the idea behind that?
Yeah. Well, so within the app right now, the work section just goes to the Indeed
Right.
profile for Huntsville. There is more if you're Mazda, Toyota, or any of those places listening to this podcast now. I would love for you to contact us, because that page gets views, but I don't really have anything to put on it yet. But we really want the app to be in, complete one-stop shop for people looking for things here, not only just those who have moved here, like yourself recently,
right,
but also just people who have been here. And I think the homepage gets regularly 300 to 500 views a day already. So that's a good chunk of people opening it up. The calendar, of course, is going to be the most popular, but
Yeah.
I've been very surprised to see all the different places people go in and look at things. And my hopes are that someone discovers things like Our Town Podcast and starts to listen to it. Just open the app, because it can play your episodes right in there like Spotify can.
Yeah, I mean, as a creator, you want every avenue possible, right? I've got a website, I've got Spotify, I've got Apple, I've got YouTube, but really anything and everything for someone to come across it. And so, and people talk about, and I'm experiencing it, how awesome this community is and how helpful, and we really want to, you do well by trying to help others. And that was a great feeling. The context of how I met you is you kind of reached out to me, hey, you've got this podcast, or can we put it on this new thing called the Rocket City Cast, which I think is the precursor to the app. And
very astute. Yeah, what it was basically a website that pulled all that stuff in that I wasn't telling people yet, but this was the internet infrastructure to pull these episodes in, that then my website can pipe that out to the app.
All of us want that, where someone kind of reaches out to you, hey, can I help you? Yeah, thank you. And I didn't know you existed. And then, and I've seen you also make other comments that you stumbled upon. I think there was like a utility company that has a podcast, and you had made a comment on their LinkedIn, like, I didn't know this existed. We're going to go ahead and put this on the app.
Right.
So people can be aware of that. So how cool and I've been telling everybody about the app, showing them how to download it, because ultimately it again is another extension of our celebration of how much we love this community. So now let's step back and talk about Zellus.
Sure.
Kind of go from like most current and backwards. 10 years now, is that correct?
Yep, I started Zellus when I was a junior in college. And while college is a great thing, I'm not saying that it isn't, I was realizing that were I to get a job in the kind of thing I want to do, I need to go get some experience.
This is at UAH?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they weren't quite teaching social media classes there yet, so I wasn't getting some of that. And then I think just as a matter of the fact that they're not going to be able to teach too much in things like SEO and stuff, because you really just have to be doing that in order to teach it. I just thought, well, you know what, I'll go and start interning, and went to several agencies, and because I didn't have experience yet, they were like, well, yeah, maybe when you finish college, and so I was like, you know what, fine, just go do it myself.
Right. And
I met I met Craig Stoltz by doing an internship with him. Back then he was doing Guerrilla Indoor. It was the only indoor ad company here in town at the time for restrooms and certain other places inside the businesses. And that didn't really quite catch on, but he was constantly getting questions about websites and social media, and that's just not something he did. So we decided to start Zellus together, and I think he came across a project and he said, do you want to start a marketing company? And I'm like, yeah, I already made a logo. Look, it's called Zellus.
How did you meet Craig?
I just contacted him and said, hey, can I come work with you? Because none of these marketing agencies are paying any attention to me. And now I hope they regret it.
Yeah.
So now I compete against those. I won't say who I interviewed with, but
yeah.
Now, we've been doing it for 10 years. We have a couple employees here. We also employ a couple people contractually throughout the U.S. and overseas. So there's a fairly large team depending on what we need to get done. But
so then you said you already had the logo created with Craig kind of when you were just starting the foundation of the company?
I was in a government job, doing a spreadsheet for about an hour a day and 7 other hours doing nothing. And because it was like an internship thing where they really couldn't trust us with anything terribly important to begin with. So I realized this wasn't my thing because I got bored, so I made a website on the server and put all the stuff where it needed to be and made everybody more efficient, and I got in trouble.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they gave me an 80,000 number spreadsheet and said check each one of these till you're done. And when I realized I'd be 350 something, that they were wanting me to leave. They couldn't actually do it because I hadn't really done anything wrong other than trying to make things easier on people. So when that happened, I said, you know what, I'm just going to move home with my parents, swallow my pride, and go headlong into doing this marketing company thing. And I'll either succeed in that or I'll find a marketing job somewhere else after I grab enough experience. And I've been doing it ever since.
Talk to me about your first client, your first project.
Oh, okay. So when you're starting an agency and you have no clients, you basically have to do stuff for free. And it was Playmore Lanes. I think they're still open.
Okay.
They had a terrible looking website. I made a better website, went to them and said, hey, here's a better website. Will you pay me $500 for it? And they said
is
yes.
this a bowling alley?
Yeah,
Playmore Lanes?
South Memorial Parkway. I think they sold it. I don't know if it's open still. It's kind of off the beaten path. But that was one of the first clients. And then just doing a bunch of networking. And I think one of our first major clients was Ornametals/Copperworks, which is a copper gutter manufacturer and installer out of Decatur/Coleman. They were one of our big first clients, big back then to us. And just stuff started to come along, and I really knew that in order to succeed, I needed to focus on Google and getting at the top. And we got to the top of Huntsville marketing a couple years in and have pretty much stayed there since. And that's a big generator for, sales for us, is people just Googling certain things in Huntsville, and we show up for that. And that's literally what we get paid to do, is to work that algorithm in people's favor, because the yellow book has shrunk down to 10 slots. And
meaning the first 10 hits you see.
First 10 results on a page.
Right.
In fact, Google's changing some of them up, and there's only 8 on mobile on some pages. So it's gotten very small. And you seem like a pretty nice guy, but if you ever kill someone, you can just hide them on the second page of Google, because no one will go looking.
That's right.
You're statistically more likely to have twins than to get to page 3.
Wow.
Like, that's the result of, if you're not on the first page, you're talking about a fraction of a fraction.
Yeah. I'm so lazy, I won't even click to the second page. I'll just refine my search.
Most people do that.
Until it's on the first page.
Mm-hmm. You have to really be looking for something odd to have to go to the second page. Yeah. And those first top 3 spots get like 60% of the clicks.
Right.
So the other, 7 results are sharing 40% of the traffic. So it's, again, one of those, like, I literally get paid to do this, but is that fair for local business?
Yeah.
Is that equitable? Those are things that, like, well, that's great if Google does that. What are other systems we can put in place that are a bit more local and equal playing ground for people? And that's also after having done 10 years of this, and search engine optimization is not cheap. It's a lot of work.
Right.
And so certain businesses just can't even afford it. And then, there's some of that is questionable on how do we create other opportunities. And businesses like We Are Huntsville and All Things Madison have created a way to kind of grab people's attention, and then also like let people know about things going on or other businesses. And I think encouraging and supporting businesses like their own and podcasts like yours to let there also be those opportunities is incredibly important, because we could face the eventuality, what if Google decides that everything's paid?
Yeah.
Then only the big companies are going to be on the first page. But are you going to start going to page 2? Or are you just going to go to what's fed to you?
Right.
And the ads have changed a lot too. The only difference between the ad and a real result is a tiny little 16 by 16 pixel ad word right next to
right.
So a lot. I love it, partly because people are clicking ads more than they ever have. And,
Right.
Zellus manages about $500,000 a year in Google ads. And people click them more than they ever have. You remember when Google ads used to be yellow?
How long ago?
It was just about 10 years ago. I think they stopped right when I started Zellus.
I think so. If I Googled it right now and looked for the old ads, I'm sure I'd be like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's screenshots. But in order to continue to make more and more money, the only way they're going to do that is make it look less and less like advertising. And so I got really good at that, understanding how that works. And we've just continued to get a lot of traffic to our site through those kinds of searches and helping other businesses, and obviously referrals. And now Craig, my business partner, is in the soccer community, which has he's very well connected in that. So he has brought half of our business has just been people he knows. He has a pretty good network. And then my end is more of the online generation. Yeah. I go out and meet with people and stuff, but I tend to work more with our employees and getting the work done. And Craig is out more doing sales and the administrative side, because I hate paperwork.
Yeah.
And so he makes sure that gets taken care of.
I've noticed that other than listing yourself as founders, you're listed as the creative director. He's listed as the managing director, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So with the soccer, is he pretty jazzed about the MLS Next with the Huntsville team coming here?
Well, he's been out of town for the last week, so I haven't gotten to see him and really talk about it. I think the main thing we talked about is our hopes are that Huntsville just makes sure it can support all three of these teams. We've got to support the Trash Pandas, we've got to support the Havoc, and we've got to support this new thing too. So again, there are people, including myself, who haven't made it out to a Trash Pandas game just yet, partly because my wife and I have been having kids lately, and that's just running an app and other things. Right. We thought we were going to get to it this summer. We're hoping maybe next month we'll be able to get to something. But I've got the hat. I've got a little panda hat and all the Trash Panda hat and all that. And just again, our main concern was Huntsville doesn't have a problem building the building infrastructure. Are we building the social infrastructure that makes sure that succeeds?
Right.
Because our main hesitation is we're building it on the bones of a team that didn't get supported.
Yeah.
Because the Huntsville Stars is literally where it's being built. So my only concern would be that it doesn't 10 years, 20 years from now, we're just recycling through different sports. But I think Huntsville has changed a whole lot since then, and so I don't think that's going to repeat, because I think they realized thinking that it would just kind of support itself didn't work. And I've really been elated to see the support of the community behind the Trash Pandas and other things. And I think we're also at a growth rate and amount of people that supporting that is easier than it used to be too.
Yeah, I told if Ricky Fernandez was my episode 1 from the Pandas, and I told him, I said, I have never experienced a city where you have 2 Trash Pandas memorabilia, shops, swag stores, right? Their team store. One's at the Bridge Street, one's at the stadium.
Right.
And it's, they are the affiliate to the Angels, but there's no Angels gear in there. It's just the Pandas. 2 good-sized stores. That tells you a community, and it's not just that we're all baseball fans or we're hockey fans or we're soccer fans. We want the social aspect. You want to go to a live game. And I noticed that at the Havoc. There's just it's kind of like when you go to a high school football game and the 7th and 8th graders are just running around.
Right.
Or the 9th graders. They're not interested in the game. Right. And then the seniors and the juniors are up there because they're buddies or might be, they're now friends with players or cheerleaders or whatever. But the kids are just running around. They're throwing the football. It's just a social thing to do. And I noticed that with the Havoc, where it's just a place where people beyond the hockey, it's a sporting event. It's something to do. Mom and dad drop you off and you go play with your friends. And then the Pandas have done that really well. And I would imagine now we have the amphitheater, which of course those tickets cost a little bit more money. And now you got the soccer. So it's just just another avenue, right? Another outlet for things that we crave, especially if you come from other parts of the country where you're used to going to major league sports, right? Or professional sports. And now it's like, hey, I want to support the minor leagues because I like going to games, so.
And I'm not even a big sports guy.
Right.
But I want to go to it because, like, it's got our name on it. And there is that sense of community that it gives you that you're just not going to get if you go to a truly professional team unless you are, like, from that city. I don't know if Huntsville will ever be big enough to have, like, I don't think we have the land or capability of being like an Atlanta-sized thing. We're still super far from that. But these minor league teams is a good test to make sure if that were ever the case that we could support it. And so I think we've been passing that test so far. Yeah. Even through all the corona mess, they were able to get through that and make their payments on the stadium, which is like everybody's like, oh boy, let's.
Well, they're going to build a swimming pool. They're going to put it outside the right field wall, right center field, I guess. And so they're looking for sponsors for that. And I've seen other ballparks. I think there's one in Vegas because, where it's a hotter climate. And I'm not sure. I'm sure you put a big netting, right, to protect the pool from. Maybe they don't allow anybody swimming during the game. But I think that's kind of a cool concept, right? To like, hey, let's have a pool and a fun area for kids, and you just tie that to Toyota Field.
Well, I think there was. I don't know if it fell through or it was just a rumor about a Margaritaville or something that was going to go in town Madison, but I don't think. I don't know. I'm not one to. 100% no on that, but I think what's also important is that Huntsville have more than movie theaters and bowling alleys. Nothing against those. For those of you who own, manage, or run movie theaters or bowling alleys, but you can only do those so much.
Right.
And really 10 years ago,
well, now if you
that's what there was.
Well, now if you own those, you've got to go next level. Your bowling alley has to have the ability to track how speed, how fast am I rolling the ball, and all these bells and whistles and extras and game within the game. And then movie theater, it's about food. Can I have the food delivered to my seat? Can I almost lay back flat, in a very comfortable chair? I'm willing to pay the extra money to have that to almost rival what you could do at home, right?
Right. Yeah, and is the streaming and all that stuff has probably made it a lot more difficult on them, and that lizard brain of, especially with a lot of the Marvel stuff, I've been just kind of like, it might eventually just show up there. Do I really want to put all the time in to go see Thor, or just wait for it to get on Disney Plus? And I'm already paying for that, so
I saw it. You might as well.
I'm not envious of that situation for them.
Wait till Disney Plus on that one. But Top Gun was one I know that Tom Cruise and others came out and said we wanted people to see it in the theater. We wanted to experience the the soundtrack and the footage, of course, and that was not one that they wanted to be released during COVID and seen at home, right? And they wanted it in the theatrical environment.
I went and saw the first major movie I went and saw after things just kind of calmed down was the Spider-Man movie.
Oh yeah.
And then I recently went and saw the Batman movie with a couple friends, and I did miss like going to the movie theaters because again we were having kids during that, so I couldn't be bringing. We were extra careful, maybe more than the average person around here. Yeah, because I didn't want to bring stuff home either. So that social aspect is too, like a lot of like, how do we encourage more of that? The big question with local economies is with the, Huntsville has its own like visitors bureau and all that, and I think we do a great job for people who are visiting. Yeah. But what are systems and things are we putting in place for people who live here regularly? How do you get South Huntsville people to come over to Madison and vice versa, Madison people to go to South Huntsville? Are Madison people going to be the only people that support Trash Pandas over the long term? Are South Huntsville people going to be the only people that support the soccer team long term? Huntsville's a bit more spread out. You've lived other places too. We're in a little bit, we don't build up, we build out. And so, at least here, I don't know if you've heard like a South Huntsville person say, oh man, It's all the way out in Madison.
I know.
That is like 20 minutes. But we're also spoiled here in that we complain about our traffic, but we have no idea.
Yeah, an average when I lived in the DC area, and it doesn't matter if you live 10 miles to like where the Nationals play downtown, or if you lived 60 miles, it's probably still going to take you 2 hours to get anywhere. And because there's going to be those days where you're driving in, there's something else going on in the city, and traffic, they've closed off this road, they've closed off that road. But here in Huntsville, it only takes really about 20 minutes maybe to get from the western stretch to the far eastern stretch, or north to south. It's really not that bad.
Even New York City.
Yeah,
so,
even New York.
Even New York City's not that bad. Actually, the worst traffic I've ever been in was Mexico City.
Really?
It took 4 hours to move 15 miles.
Yeah. Or Atlanta.
No. Do you know that Google Maps, your line gets red?
Yeah.
There's a darker color than that.
Is it really? And you saw that in Mexico City?
Mexico was completely dark on the map. There was nowhere you could point. There are people whose job is to sell food to people sitting in cars.
Did they turn them off?
Yeah, you just sometimes you have to. Like, it's that bad. So we've got nothing on other countries that are just run into infrastructure problems.
And that's a regular occurrence?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, 15 miles, 4 hours.
I want to step back to, you started talking a little bit about Zellus with the logo, but the name, and I believe it's a Greek thing, right? Greek mythology? Or
you're the first who's ever said that to me.
And the second question is, I thought it was spelled with one L, and you've added an L. Can you talk about the name Zellus?
Right. So Zellus actually, the Greek mythology thing was a happy mistake. I had no idea about that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I just like the word zealous, being passionate about what you do, but I hate how it's spelled.
Oh, the Zealous is what you're... Okay. Gotcha.
Just another example of how English is a confusing language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zelos is what it really looks like phonetically. And I basically respelled it so that it was symmetrical. Mm-hmm. And the logo is just an oversimplification of the word zealous. It's the L's and the Z's. And then I found out, Zellus with one L is the Greek god of competition. Marketing. Wow, okay, cool. This is just meant to be. So it came more to just like being zealous and passionate about what you do, but I also grew up hanging out with the skater kids, and I liked skate logos and kind of the modern, like, edgy look. So
yeah,
that's where the logo came from.
By the way, who was your favorite skater?
I mean,
were you a ramp or a street, like, fan of ramp or street skating?
So we were out in the middle of nowhere, so I wasn't really into the city skating stuff as much as you're just out on the street, going down the road. I grew up in Summerville, Alabama, so you could come to Huntsville and do it. And I wasn't really a skater. I'm kind of a clumsy person on anything that's wheeled. I more hung out with them than actually did it. Okay. Though I got an itch in my late 20s to buy a one wheel. You ever seen the commercials for those?
I know what those are.
They're extremely dangerous.
Yep.
I broke my arm and had a concussion, and then my wife made me sell it. She's fully justified in doing. But it feels kind of like surfing, but on the street. Yeah. It was so fun, so addictive, but it'll just cut out from under you going 15 miles an hour.
Oh, no.
And then it just stops and you fly off. So that was the majority of my skating experience, was actually in my later 20s when I got an itch for it. But I just hung out with those kids and listened to that kind of music and stuff. But I wasn't per se a skater kid.
Yeah. I think it was Back to the Future 1. If you remember the very beginning, he's like late for school and he gets on the skateboard, and that was a Volterra, which you probably could have bought at Kmart. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a nice skateboard, but that was like, I think outside of California, like California, the skating has always been a thing, right? It's an institution. But, like, it just took over the nation in the mid-'80s. And Tony Hawk at that point was, like, 16, 17 years old. And I saw him in the Powell team at the mall.
You saw him in person?
Yeah, I was probably 11 or 12. I was 12. And I'd have to look it up. Tony Hawk, I thought he was 25. Mm-hmm. He was probably 17 or 18 years old. And he was with the Bones Brigade. So it was Steve Caballero, not Mike McGill. I can't remember who was on the team. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they had like a launch ramp, and they did an exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a rail slide thing that they built, and everyone was skating. And you did that for like 2 or 3 years, and then you get like a BMX bike or you stop skating. But we were all building ramps and Powell Peralta, and they were making movies.
Right.
If you ever remember like The Search for Animal Chin and just some of that stuff, and then it kind of just died off from a fevered national scale, I thought. But I don't know, I've always had just like place in my heart for skateboarding.
I remember
even though I can't skate
in
anymore.
the 90s. You remember those like
tech
decks?
Yeah.
That was real big too. And again, the skater kids like those, because if you're stuck in school, you could at least still like do that. And so I grew up out in the middle of nowhere near here. I've mostly lived in Alabama since I was 8. So I call Alabama home. I moved here from a couple other places.
Right.
And but I've been here mostly since I was 8. And so I call it my home. I have, that allegiance to Huntsville, and I want to see businesses succeed. So
sure. And where exactly is Somerville?
Somerville is, you go out in the middle of nowhere, turn right, and that's Somerville. So you go south Huntsville, and you cross the river.
Okay.
And you keep going.
Okay.
And you keep going.
And you
then you turn right, and then you keep going. And you keep going. And
is it like down as far as Birmingham latitude? And then
have you ever been to Arab?
No, but I've heard of it.
It's not quite as far as Arab, but it's out that way. Really, it's the land underneath the river, below the arsenal.
Okay.
Somerville is all that stuff on the other side of the river.
Okay.
That you wouldn't live there unless your parents wanted to get out of the city and move you there when you're 8 years old and make you pick up rocks and mow a acre of grass. If you hear any resentment in my voice.
So you seem to be a hybrid of, you certainly have to have a penchant for some business, right? Mm-hmm. You have a business mind, and I know you have a business partner, but there's still that interest in, hey, you know what? I've interviewed, you get out of college and I'm just going to start my own thing, which takes some guts, right? And some confidence in yourself. You also have a passion with marketing, and then no matter what business, okay, how is this going to take flight? And, how are we going to get customers, and what do people want? And then you also have the creative side, and then even with video games, right? And then I guess there's even a technical side too, or maybe do some programming, or there's some design, some engineering. Talk to me first though about like just kind of when you were in middle school and high school. What kind of subjects were you interested in? What did you excel at academically?
I mean, I excelled at everything just because I was a bit of a perfectionist as a kid.
Okay.
I made like a couple B's ever. I took school far too seriously.
No C's.
So that's the funny thing. I look back at school and thought, man, I could have took things a little easier, while other people were like, man, I should have paid more attention. I was on the other side. So I was a nerd, and I enjoyed excelling. Mm-hmm. And subjects that interested me, I really enjoyed art, actually. The tests and other things was just to prove I could excel. The stuff I enjoyed was creative things, and when getting close to college, I was thinking more graphic design or possibly going for writing. And my dad sat me down, and as you say in the South, we had a little come to Jesus and said, son, you've got to just, whatever you choose to do, make sure you do something that you can take care of a family with.
Right.
And I'd always enjoyed marketing as a kid. Once I found out how to make bean bags, and one day my mom found a bunch of dollars stuffed in my shorts, and she's like, what's this? I'm like, I was selling stuff at school.
Oh, that's cool.
So I've really enjoyed kind of entrepreneurship, and I didn't get it from I've talked to my mom and dad about this. Neither of them, they weren't entrepreneurs originally. I think I get it more from my mom. She currently does stuff with Monet. I think it comes more from her. Her mom sold jewelry and things as sort of side business. So I think I get that kind of itch from their side. And so by the time I was getting to college, I thought marketing is something, a skill that has technical side, which I enjoy, but also is going to allow me to be creative and use writing and other stuff. So it felt like the right thing for me.
Let's talk about these Bing bags a little bit more. Was there a lot of iterations with those? Were they just a solid pattern?
It was pretty simple. It was, you cut a balloon and stick beans in it and
Really?
layer it a couple times. And there was a couple weeks where everybody wanted a beanbag. And I sold, I don't know, 10, 20 of them.
So like fidget toys, really, for...
Yeah, I mean, again, it was the 90s, so...
Yeah.
It was just easy to make them and go sell them to some kids and barter and things like that. So that was kind of always in my nature.
Okay.
And I enjoyed the feeling of making something that somebody wanted, to give money for. That's a cool feeling.
Yeah. Now, what about when you were in college? So you go to UAH.
Mm-hmm.
I was over there yesterday for was the North Alabama chapter for Information System Security.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, they have different events, and so there's like a lunch, and you go, and there's a company called Expedient that was, they were sponsoring a lunch. You come and hear their presentation, on their products or services. It was at Wilson Hall.
Okay.
I went to George Mason University, which I think is similar to UAH in that you get you get kids from Alabama, wherever they live, who come here and live in the dorms, but then there's plenty of people who already live in Huntsville, or that would be a commuter student. And I was definitely a commuter student, where George Mason is up in the D.C. area, and there are kids who come there from different parts of Virginia, and then there's plenty of people like me who are working full-time and going to school full-time, had a young family. And so as I pulled in, I was like, you know what, man, UAH is it's a good-sized school. I know that it's got a new president, came from, I think, down in Tuscaloosa at the other, the University of Alabama. I think he ran the engineering department. So I heard a podcast where they have a lot of great plans for UAH. But when you were there, were there some cool projects you got in that just really kind of solidified that interest that you were planting those seeds when you were growing up, and then boom, you get this project or two where like, man, this is what I want to do. Can you talk me through one of those?
Sure. So first of all, UAH changed a lot right about when I left, which was irritating because they built all the cool stuff after I
After you left.
Like a movie theater and a bunch of other things. I'm like, man, I paid for all that because it was mostly commuting. And then like the year that I graduated, they like forced all seniors to have to live on campus. Like that was mandatory. It's because they were trying to get away from it just being commuter.
Right.
And they were wanting it to be a place that students feel like they can come to and live at. It wasn't quite there when I got there. And they have since built like the I2C, which is just across the way from Wilson. And they've built a lot of other things. They've bought all the land across the street there on Sparkman, and they're going to make some kind of like school student city thing over there with a bunch of restaurants for some interesting space. I've heard about that. But when I was at school, I joined the marketing club. That was about the only extracurricular thing within marketing itself. And that's partly why I had to go like work on getting internships too. But I really enjoyed that. I had several teachers who really inspired. All schools you have professors who phone it in and professors who are really passionate about it. And I always felt that connection when the professor did have that passion or previous experience. Unfortunately, one of them, the one that probably affected me the most was Dr. Landry, and he's unfortunately no longer with us. Passed away, I believe, to some kind of heart problem, which was heartbreaking to hear.
Right.
But I still have several that I see over there because I rent some space for another thing I do there at the I2C, and it's funny to run into a professor that I'm like, hey, I've been running a marketing company for 10 years now. I still remember going to your class. So I wouldn't say that well, you know what? There was one thing. There was an entrepreneurial competition that was about an app that you had to basically make an idea and do a pitch. And I won $1,000 with my team. And it was about a small technology I'd built with my brother called Maptin, Maptin. I think it's still on the UH website.
Really?
Basically, it took their Google Calendar, categorized it, and placed it on the map which, funny enough, Google or the Rocket City app does that. It places the events on the map, but this went a step further, that it actually categorized them via color. And so as a student, I thought it was weird that I'd have to go pee to see what events were going on, because literally the only place they had the calendars was at the urinals.
Right.
And I was like, man, it's like 2010 and we're still having to
Right.
post this stuff on the wall.
Right.
My brother's more of the programmer, so he built it, and I did more of the actual marketing and getting people to use it. But we had at one point, we had a couple hundred visitors a day, and students were like using it to see what was going on in campus. But it was just a project. But that taught me, like, hey, that's really cool to like make a thing and get people to use it and improve their life somehow, or make things easier. That just that was probably one of the things that made me think. And shortly after that is when I started Zellus. So I feel that project was probably one of the turning points for me.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, I want to make sure that we talk about this before we don't have any more time, but Toastmasters and public speaking. So you are a semifinalist in 2018. I'd like for you to, and I did some research on Toastmasters. Had I thought about it sooner, I probably would have done more. But to me, it seems like one of those precursors to like a TED Talk type thing, where you're watching it, and it's, and I think from what I read about you, you wanted to be able just to be a better public speaker, maybe have more confidence, and maybe you did it knowing you would go out and do a lot of pitches of your products that you would create. But so talk to me about the local chapter, of how you got involved with Toastmasters, and then we'll kind of go from there, because I think I'll have a lot of follow-up questions.
Sure. So I got involved, I think there was one I went to for a couple times, and then eventually I landed on one that is, I think, still running over at Centaur off of Research Park area. And I did want to just increase my skills, but then I also heard there was like a national and world competition. I'm like, whoa, that'd be so cool to go and do that. And because I've been running a business, I've gotten pretty good at talking to people, but getting up in front of people still made me a little bit nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are more scared, they say, the public speaking than dying. I don't know that that's true, but you can read stats like that online. But anyway, I found out I was pretty good at it, and then I was like, well, what's it take to like get the awards and things? And I kind of kept studying and practicing, and Toastmasters is very much about staying within your time limit, avoiding ums and uhs, and being, well-spoken and getting the point across. And time is a big thing too. You can't go over. That's a big no-no.
And they're what, like the 5 to 7 minute range?
It
can vary.
Can vary, but yeah, 5 to 7 minutes. And so I did that for about a year, and then went ahead and decided to do, let's go ahead and compete. And I won, and then I won again, and suddenly found out that they're like, you're going to the semifinals. And I'm like, what semifinals? They're like, the world semifinals. Wait, world? Like, I didn't realize I had gotten that far.
Yeah.
And so in 2018, I competed against the top 100 people in the world out of about total 30,000 people had participated that year. I was in the top 100.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
I appreciate it. I think shortly after that, I got involved with the Video Game Design Club thing, and I thought, you know what, I've been to world semifinals, and Toastmasters takes a lot of time, so I'd kind of moved on, did my thing. I didn't need to win world semifinals, just like getting to that was like, I've got my cool little trophy, and so I'm good with that. And I might revisit it later, but there's I'd like to do more public speaking, possibly paid in the future. I've done some classes where I've been paid, but like, I love the whole getting up and speaking and getting people to understand a thing. Not so much, I don't know, I think it'd be cool to do a TED Talk. There's lots of things I'd like to talk about in something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think TED's getting kicked back off again soon here. But anyway.
But with the Toastmasters, is it, and please feel free to talk about the topic that you practiced and were judged on, but I was watching some of them. They are somewhat theatrical, right? Mm-hmm. There's not only do you have to keep within time limits, so there has to be some interesting content, and I'm sure there's going to be a well-structured opening and whatever experiences in there, and then you got to end it in a certain way, so you're probably being judged on how you structure your presentation, your argument. In some of them, there's a comedic element. Mm-hmm. Some of it's theatrical. I was watching the one guy that won, I think, in 2021, and he put like underwear over his suit, and he was talking about getting bullied, but it was hilarious, right? He was being really funny. So, can you talk a little bit about what you're judged on, and then kind of even what the what's the the proportional breakdown, where they give the heaviest weighted average to?
Well, and that's just now I'm putting it out in the open there. There's a bit of the politics of do you play to the audience and do I overcame this thing and I'm so much better and it's funny and now look at me now. A lot of those win. And I think partly I didn't get to the second round because I never really made it about me.
Right.
People do like the whole story, the underdog kind of thing, and those did well. In fact, those are the ones that won the year I was there. My talk was about no one person can make a difference.
Okay.
My argument was that's a dumb statement. And one of the examples I gave is that if no one had listened to Martin Luther King, he wouldn't have made a difference.
True.
So it was because of the people that acted on what he said that made the difference together. So rather than us always making this goal about being that person to make the difference in the world, why not make it a goal in our lives to listen to the kinds of people and support the kinds of people that can also help make things better, rather than always that hero complex that we need to change things. Support people who are already changing things.
Yeah.
And that was my semifinal thing, and it wasn't about me and some funny story of underwear on my pants or whatever.
Right.
Maybe it just didn't hit. And I'm not also saying that, my performance was perfect, but a lot of the stuff they did well was very personal about a thing they overcame or did. I just didn't want to make it about me because it didn't really...
Yeah.
I've had a nice life. I don't have any, I didn't overcome cancer. Yeah, I got bullied, so what? It just wasn't... Yeah. It's not in my personality to get up and talk about some kind of adversity I'd had. So yeah. I wanted to make a point. I wanted to make an intellectual point that hopefully made people change their perspective. And maybe that's not what wins Toastmasters. I don't know. But it got me into the semifinals, and we were allowed to do another one. I couldn't do the same one. That's the one that got me into the semifinals. And to get to the final round, I had done a new one, but they don't really give you any time. And that's a lot of pressure to get in this was my first year of really even being in Toastmasters.
Yeah.
I wasn't even prepared to get that far. So
what is the... is it mostly younger folks? What is the composite of those who attend? They're people like my age, they're mid-40s?
All ages. From 90 to, I think the youngest was 18.
Oh, cool.
So that was the fun thing. A thing that I think Toastmasters struggles with is that it is a very rigid program, very scheduled, which doesn't speak a lot to the millennial generation. And that was always something they said that they struggled with, is getting younger people in it. There were young people in it, but it was much more the working professional in their 34, mid-30s up. And I think that's just really something Toastmasters is going to struggle with. And the fact that the name is weird.
Yeah.
Toastmasters makes people think that we're all toasting each other with a glass.
Right.
But that's not, it's a speaking... I actually have the certification. I could put the little CC after my name for competent communicator. I finished that certification, which you have to kind of, like Boy Scouts, go through this book of things and finish it out.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the history of Toastmasters versus TED, but I would imagine TED is probably done a better job with their marketing and making that maybe more attractive. I know that those TED Talks are longer. They're more in the 11 to 15 minute range.
Well, Toastmasters is specifically about improving speaking skills, where TED is about like messaging
Some
sort,
some
like
theory or hypothesis. Yeah.
Topical kind of thing. It's very much about getting those ideas out there, versus Toastmasters is very much the closest you're going to get to speaking sport.
Yeah. You ready to play the quick six? I want to make sure we get to a game before we run out of time. So that's not the right thing here. There we are. Game time. The quick six, where the answers don't necessarily have to be quick.
Okay.
But I like to just call it the quick six. I've got the pick six. Had I not had AC problems, I probably would have spent more time up here prepping for today. But I'm also worried that my machines are going to catch on fire, right? I've adapted.
We're glistening.
I know, right? And I think I've stopped sweating a little bit. But, yeah, this is the game where I have 6 questions for you and maybe even a couple sub-questions. But your answers do not have to be quick. And they blew on the ground. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, we talked about movie theaters a little bit earlier. All right, you go to the theater, and you're going to get some snacks. What candy? What candy? It's always a given that you're going to get popcorn or not popcorn, right? And you can get a drink. But what candy?
Swedish Fish. Sometimes Sour Patch Kids.
Okay.
And then maybe those like bite ones that are like some kind of chocolate.
Oh, like the snow caps?
Yeah, some of them have like the frozen ones that you can eat, which you just kind of have to plow through because they're not gonna last super long. But Swedish Fish is my favorite candy, and so if they have it in there, I'll probably get that.
You know, I just went to Thor, and they didn't have the Swedish Fish brand like the one that we're all accustomed to, but they had their own red fish thing. And I'm like, I'll try it, and it was very different. Mm-hmm. You know how the Swedish Fish is a little bit of a tougher, gummy, whatever. This was a lot. I don't know. It was very soft, and it didn't have it. It tasted okay, but I'm with you. I love Swedish Fish, and it wasn't even near the real thing. But it was interesting, like how soft they were. I would recommend them, but
it's funny how candy companies are like, we'll just make red fish. That's what people want. No, we eat it because it tastes good. I've never liked Swedish. Told someone, you know why I like Swedish Fish? Because they're shaped like fish and they're red.
They're just good.
They just taste good.
All right. All right. So you said we haven't talked too much about video games. But
okay.
Give me your record of consecutive hours that you sat in front of a video game, if you can recall. Maybe it's in days. I don't know, but
so my brother will laugh if he ever listens to this, but he and I, a long time ago, Skyrim, a game called Skyrim came out, and he and I played like all night through, and I think it was a good 8 or 10 hours.
Skyrim.
Yeah, it's a series called Elder Scrolls.
Okay.
And he and I had played it when we were younger. The one before that. 2 of them before that, Morrowind and Oblivion, and this new one, Skyrim, came out, and there was so much hype about it, and it was a really good game, and it's still getting played today. And yeah, I think that was the longest I'd ever, in a single sitting, played a game.
Through the night's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I started at like 9 and went to sleep at like 6 or 7. So it was a long time.
All right, Atlantic or Pacific Ocean?
I've been to both. I've not completely crossed either, but I really like Hawaii, so I guess I'll say Pacific.
Okay. Now, and this is a sub question to this: Atlantic or Gulf? If you're gonna do a beach vacation or go to the coast in the context of Alabama or Florida, you want to be on the Gulf side or the Atlantic side?
The only times I've been in the Atlantic, it's been cold.
Oh, really?
And so my concept of the Atlantic Ocean is this like frigid water space.
You went the wrong time.
So I really only am really familiar with like out in the Pacific and Hawaii and then like the Gulf Coast. I've never like been and sat at a beach on the East Coast. The only times I've been there must have just been when they were cold, and so in my head I think I have the wrong concept.
Give it another try.
Yeah,
you'll enjoy it.
I'll have to. I want to go to like one of the beaches like in New York area.
Like Ocean City, New Jersey.
Yeah, that might be fun. Or just, I hear that beaches in the Carolinas are really nice too.
Yeah.
Just never made it because
My recommendation to you, I wouldn't go any further north than the Outer Banks in North Carolina. And the Outer Banks are awesome. Now, I am a new convert to Huntsville. This is my town. And we are going to start going on our first vacations here. But of all the places I've ever been, the Outer Banks is really awesome. It's unique. But I wouldn't go any further north. It is so crowded.
You ever been to Cancun, like in Mexico?
I haven't been there.
We just went almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the nicest beach I've been to. Because, well, it's very clear like Hawaii, but it's not raining all the time. That's the problem with Hawaii is like you can only be out there for so long and then you get dumped on. And then, so my favorite beach thus far has been, but it also might have happened to be that it was an all-inclusive resort, so I was just eating food constantly. I don't know if it was the beach. Who knows?
What's your favorite color to work with? When and we've talked about your inclusion of the colors in the Rocket City app, but you've done a lot of designs and working with different customers, right? And different color sets. Is there a particular color that you really just enjoy working with?
Well, if it's not obvious with the logo of Zellus, I have no reason behind it, and you asking this question, I'm sure my wife would laugh through this question because she knows what I'm going to say, and it would be the color orange.
Okay.
I don't know why. It's not a sports thing. I am literally obsessed. I have lots of shirts and shoes and hats and all kinds of things. I am completely obsessed with the color, and I don't know why. And whenever someone's like, I want to, this is my color palette, and they include orange, I probably lean more into the orange than they would want me to.
Yeah.
And I really restrained myself because with Rocket City app, I didn't want it to be about Zellus.
Yeah.
I didn't get on this podcast to say, Zellus marketing is awesome. I got on here specifically because I wanted to tell people about this cool tool that we had built that's for everybody. But I really lay claim to orange. Like, people know me if they don't know my name or don't remember Zellus.
Yeah.
They'll remember that guy who wears orange a lot.
And the golf world, orange really came popular with Ricky Fowler. He went to Oklahoma State University, and then on Sundays, similar to like Tiger on a Sunday would always wear all black except for a red shirt. And he had been doing that for years because it's like, victory, I'm going to kick your butt. It's Sunday, I'm going to win this tournament. And, he built a lot of intimidation through that. And then Ricky Fowler became this real icon because he looks like, especially when he was younger, he looked like he just came from the BMX track, and he had been a BMXer. So kids he had the flat bill. He went to Oklahoma State, so then he was wearing orange pants with an orange belt, with an orange shirt. And then Puma picked up on it. And Puma was his apparel company. And, man, I'm telling you, like, from the golf perspective, the color orange was definitely just a tie to Ricky. And even though he's not playing as well anymore, he's still, you look at orange and you just think of Puma.
Yeah. Statistically, orange is the least favorite color.
Really?
Yes. So when you like it and you own it because the statistics are you're probably the only person in the room that likes that color.
And up in the DC area, there's several small companies that I'm aware of that chose orange on purpose to kind of buck the trend. Right, and it's noticeable in their lanyards, very bright orange, and it stands out that those guys must be with that company because they're the only ones who have orange.
Well, people are like, so you're an Auburn fan. I'm like, Auburn didn't invent orange, so calm down.
That actually looks like more of Miami's colors when you get a little green in there too. But
the Vols,
the Tennessee,
we get that sometimes. So you're a Vols fan. In the South, it's as if football was invented before color.
Yeah.
To a lot of people here, so they'll just equate the color of your company to some team.
I might have to get feedback or something from somebody on my logo. I'm like, you got to change those colors. Like, well, maybe it's Americana, red, white, and blue. We'll stick away from Auburn and Alabama.
You were good that you didn't make it too crimson.
Right.
So I never got any kind of sports allegiance from your logo.
But then when you look at like the one that's off to my left, it's a little more, it depends on who, I mean, I have like an RGB, but it never, whatever I order, it never seems to be in the color set or the color I want.
Right.
They always vary. All right. All right, so you have a choice. I think you said earlier you want to see Thor. But of these 4 movies that just came out, which one are you going to see in the theater if you haven't already? Thor, Minions, Top Gun, or Jurassic Park?
Thor. I mean, so my favorite Marvel movies are the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're in Thor.
They're in Thor.
So that's just default to that. And Chris Pratt's one of my favorite actors. My wife will tease me that I have a man crush on him. He's a cool dude.
It's true, yeah.
And he's also in the Jurassic recent movies, but I've just not liked any of the new ones ever since the very first one. Nothing after that I've really been interested in. My kids are too young to really like any of the Minion stuff, and then I'm too young to really care too much about Top Gun.
Yeah.
So it kind of just defaults to Thor for me.
Let me ask you this. So as a father, this is the last question of Leo and Tom. Let's say when they're about 8 years old, what's one thing you're excited to teach them as they get to that age?
Well, I'm excited now because I love being from, America. We don't really have a whole lot of culture other than hamburgers and capitalism. No, not even hamburgers. Like, we've taken that from somewhere else too. Right. And I love going to Mexico and visiting, where my wife is from, and teaching them that they aren't just Americans, they're Mexican. And so I really look forward to them kind of teaching that. Their last names are Holden Rocha. So they took on the Latin tradition of father's name, mother's name. And so I look forward to kind of with them learning more Spanish, because my wife and I have not done a great job together doing that. And so up until like that age, I hope to learn a lot more as well, up to the age of 8. And then when they start to hit 8, I'll also kind of nerd out and say I do look forward to playing video games with them as well. And so I'd say those are the 2 things. I look forward to kind of teaching them who they are and where they came from, and going and visiting those kinds of places and learning, both languages, and then also the kind of the nerdy side of playing video games with them when they're old enough.
That's awesome, man. And Leo's now 2 weeks old? Is that right?
Tom is 2 weeks old.
Oh, Tom is 2 weeks old.
And my son Leo just hit
2
years old.
That's exciting, man. Dude, enjoy that. Like, I know people probably give you that advice, but now being a father of my oldest is 23 and my youngest is 15, enjoy when they're young.
Yeah, they can't talk back.
Yeah, they can't talk back.
They love you.
They're smarter than you and everything, and it's like, okay, just respect your old dad, please.
Yeah, I enjoy it because now Tom's just making grunting noises and crying at this point, but Leo's starting to say rudimentary sentences and other things, so that's been kind of fun.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with my Jeep and it being a truck, and we got him a little ride-around truck for the yard, and he's obsessed with that. So it's kind of fun now that he's old enough to like get obsessed about a thing, to kind of play with that with him now that he's kind of turning into his own little human that can do its own things rather than just whatever you hand him, he plays with it. And he's learned the word no too, unfortunately. They all learn that word eventually, and that's the same in English and Spanish. You only need to learn it once.
Carl, it's been a pleasure having you. Any final thoughts or shout outs that you want to give?
Well, just kind of loop back around again to Rocket City app, in that I just encourage anyone who's listened to this that since listening to it has not turned on the App Store and downloaded it to please do so, because it's through this program, it's through this app that we'll be able to support shows like yourself and create a culture around that content creation locally, and being able to get the word out and not having to struggle to have small businesses succeed, that there are platforms there to support them, and that we've built in opportunities to make that easy and affordable for businesses and content creators to be able to get that out there, and to just let us know if you have any questions or input. We've also gotten emails from people of, hey, this would be a really cool thing. Guess what? I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. You're going to actually be able to get a hold of me and give feedback, because maybe you have a good idea And this isn't about like my ego or anything. I just want this app to be the best it can be. So that's what's been really fun, is getting that feedback from people and just continuing to improve it. So I just encourage everybody to get it. It's free, and you're going to enjoy it, and you're supporting local business. So shop local, app local.
Yeah, I love the app local. That's it. Did you coin that on your own? Take credit for it.
Unless I heard it somewhere else, I'm the only one I know that have said it.
I love it. And that's a whole new, I think it's a whole new paradigm, really. And it's a culture shift.
I hope so. I think there are people who make apps here. There are a couple apps other than just ours that have been made but never really got the support that they needed. And I hope that maybe one day those can get that kind of support too.
Well, I appreciate your support. Again, like I said earlier, Huntsville is awesome for so many reasons. And one is just from a business perspective, how friendly it is where people genuinely want to help one another versus just kind of stepping on someone, right, to have your own success, because there's plenty of success to go around, however you define success. And I wish you all the best. I know it's already off to a great start. And with that feedback, it'll only get better. So I wish you all the best with that, and hopefully we'll have you back on in the future, and we'll see how things are going.
I would love to. Thanks for inviting me, and I've really enjoyed it, other than sweating quite a bit.
I know.
But it kind of keeps the pressure on you, like really focused when you're warm.
I know. I'm sure I've sweated through all my clothes, and hopefully the black is covering that up. But
well, we're glistening with a wonderful experience. So,
all the best, Carl.
Thank you.
Have a good one.